I am Brittnee Leysen. I am in my final year of my PhD, which for me means my fifth year, I guess, but I'm full-time, I'm not part-time, but that's just due to multiple suspensions of studies. And I want to preface this by saying, one, I'm very ill today, so apologies if I need to take breaks for water. And two, I'm not advocating for suspending your studies. I'm just giving you the information so you can make an informed decision if that is the best thing for you, and trying to break down some of the stigma around the suspension process. So we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing that I would say is don't panic. If you are leaning towards a suspension of studies, or maybe it's something your supervisors have brought up, something that's been discussed, don't worry about it. I think a lot of the time there's this negative connotation to a suspension rather than an extension. So I guess the difference between the two: suspension, essentially you're stopping the clock on your thesis for a set period of time, and then when it starts again, that time kind of gets added on, whereas an extension just means you're carrying on and then some extra, if that makes any sense. But the suspension of studies is not as scary of a process or word as people like to make it a lot of the time. So the reasons that someone would suspend, a lot of the time people assume it's that first one, physical health, which can be one of the reasons, but you can also suspend due to mental health, bereavement, financial hardship. There's something that's impacting the progression of your studies. It could be any multitude of things, but it's also important to recognize that there are different processes for aspects of these as well. Like your funding body or sponsor may have their own policy which will allow you funded extensions, or they may have their own process around bereavement or mental health, something like that. So it's worth speaking to your supervisors and the graduate school first to determine what options are available to you and what your best path forward is. So we're going to look at a case study for suspending studies. So let's say I'm an international student who's here on a student visa, but I'm undergoing an operation and need to take some time off. I'm worried about being sent back to my home country or falling behind in my studies if I take this time off. Now, this is something that you could have a worry about even if you aren't an international student. Everybody is concerned about taking time off, even when you're entitled to it for a break, as we've already established in earlier talks. So definitely when something life happens, as we've all seen in the past couple of years, that you can't control, there are options that are available to you. So suspending your studies is something that even for international students, you have that option. I myself am an international student on a student visa, and I was diagnosed with a chronic illness during the course of my PhD, which resulted in multiple operations and suspensions of studies. But I didn't know until my second year that I was entitled to suspending my studies as an international student. And once I found out, it dramatically changed my mental health, my physical health, my ability to focus on my thesis in the times when I was feeling good. So it is always worth just asking what possibilities there are if you're in a situation like this, or in a mental health crisis, or there's something that's happening in your life. Don't suffer in silence. So in this case study, the first thing that you would want to do is contact the graduate school and your supervisors about your circumstances. Document everything and attach it in your suspension of studies form. So there's a very short form that they would have you fill out if you were going to suspend, and you would attach any kind of documentation that kind of supports the 200-word blurb that you'd be writing up about why you're requesting a suspension. For even international students are entitled to suspensions. So in my case, which I believe it's the same, but Again, always ask the graduate school and look up documentation, but as far as I'm aware, it is still a maximum 60 days consecutive suspension that you can take. You can't go over that, but you can take multiple of those. So they can't be back to back. It would have to be spaced out throughout the course of your studies, but you won't have your visa cancelled and sent home if you take that. And for some people, that can make a huge amount of difference, is being able to take that 60 days if you need it. So navigating the stigma, which I think is maybe even the bigger roadblock, that when I've spoken to other students who've taken suspensions, that they have, even more so than being worried about visas cancelling or anything like that. There is a big negative connotation around, oh, you know, how long it took you or any of this. It is false. It's not true, especially in the day that we live in, with everything that's been going on. People are so understanding of things take time, and nowhere does it show up that you've taken this suspension of studies. I guarantee you can get jobs even if you've taken a suspension of studies from your PhD. I've recently gotten two, so it happens. So the stigma is definitely outdated. It's not something that's there and that people think about. There is a SAGSA blog piece that I wrote up a couple of years ago when I took my first suspensions of studies, called Taking a Break. I'll link that in the chat after this. But basically, life doesn't stop for your PhD, but if you need to stop your PhD to focus on life, then don't take that as a failure. I did it first and it took me some time to overcome it, but once I did, I was much better off for that. And your path is whatever works best for you. And if that means taking a bit of extra time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting your well-being first. As has already been discussed in talks over this, everyone has realized by, you know, second, third, fourth year that you do need to prioritize your health and well-being and mental health in order to do good work. And you cannot pour from an empty cup. Your research will be all the better for you taking the time to fill your cup. So you do the best work when you are at your best. So for the sake of your research, if not for the sake of yourself, take the time that you need. If it takes a little bit longer than you anticipated, that is fine, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And good luck on your endeavors.